Hi everyone, my name is Heather and I'm the person behind Happy Puppy Truffles. Today I just wanted to share with you guys some tips on how to fold origami paper and to get things kind of lined up right, and some things that I do that might be helpful to you guys. And I do have up a few videos that showcase some of the basic folds of origami, so I'll have a link to that playlist again here to remind you guys if you're looking for some kind of slower introduction to some of the basic folds in origami, such as the square base, the water bomb base, the blintz base, there's a lot of them that kind of come along with that, the petal fold, all those kinds of things. So they're in that folder of, not folder, but they're in a playlist, and yeah, you guys can find them there, and if you need help with something, hopefully that'll be a little helpful to you guys. But in general, I just wanted to kind of give you guys some tips of what I do when I'm folding to kind of make things go a little easier. Now, there certainly matters a little bit, first of course, on what kind of paper you're using. If you're just using regular old origami paper, then you're not going to have too much trouble getting it to fold the way you want to. I do tend to think sometimes that, getting a good crease, whether you use your fingernail or you just smooth it out really good, is really key to making a good origami piece. Pretty much every single origami project that I can think of really benefits from having a nice sharp crease. If you're doing something like the wet folding technique where you're molding the origami paper, then having those sharp edges is something you probably don't want. But for just general stuff, it's really to your advantage to make good creases from the beginning, and that winds up usually helping later on when you need to do something too, when some of the folds get a little more difficult. So I definitely recommend getting used to making good clean folds first. I personally like to pick an origami that I love and that's easy to make, and I just do that with my free time if I want to practice and kind of get my hands working again. I certainly did that a lot as a kid. I made tons of carnation flowers. That was one I really liked making, and I'd really use any paper I had around, my napkin at dinner, leftover piece from the newspaper, piece from a magazine, anything like that to be able to fold. So there's no one particular model that's going to be more helpful than others, I suppose. It's really more about you finding something you like to make and just practicing it a lot. That's why making something like a kusadama can be really good, because you're forced to make a ton of pieces, and it really gives you a chance to practice your folding. So I would say, find something that really helps you get a chance to practice a lot of folds. I think, when you're doing just regular paper like that, like I said, you don't really need any fancy tools. But before I show you guys how to fold with that, I did want to just address, and I've shown a few projects, of course, when you use thicker paper, construction paper, this is basil craft paper, those kinds of things are really hard to fold, but not impossible. And I've shown you guys a few techniques before, of course. You can just fold straight off with your hand, but it winds up giving you something that's pretty creased. But if you really need a sharp crease, you're going to need to use your fingernails and do something like that. And that can really wreak havoc on your nails if you don't want that to happen, Or you can also use a ruler to help you along to crease things out too. So if you fold things over, for example, get things sort of started and then just use this to kind of create the crease for you. And then you don't have to worry about hurting your fingernails, but you do need to be a little careful. If you do that too much, you can kind of wear out the paper a little bit. So it's just a kind of a give and take a little of what you want to do with things. But certainly makes it a little easier to fold this kind of paper and still make really nice, clean, sharp creases for projects that you might be working on. An origami project that has folds that are really kind of loose has a tendency to not keep its shape and fall apart. So you want to take the time to make good creases. Other tools you might want to have when you're working on an origami project is like an orange stick. This is always a nice kind of small tool that you can use for popping out like petals on flowers. And it's not really dangerous in the sense that it's not super sharp, and you're going to be able to kind of get in there without accidentally poking through and hurting your entire project. Paper clips can work great too, but like I say, sometimes they can be a little dangerous. The sharp edge can tear your paper, and there's nothing more frustrating than working on something and poking this part and accidentally popping a hole through it. So I would recommend using, I have like these, plastic coated ones. They tend to have a little less sharp edge to them. So you can kind of just open it out like this and use it as a tool for little tiny spaces and petals and things like that to pop open. Or if you're doing miniature origami, it can be helpful. So they do sell fancy origami tool kits. Basically, they're just these things, but just shaped in a different way. So, you know, if you really want to have something like that, you have somebody who, you know, is a really huge fan of origami and you want to buy that as a gift, that is great, super cool. But, you know, it's not necessary at all. So these are good enough for sure. So let me just show you guys some of the things I do when I'm folding origami to kind of make sure that everything gets lined up. I mean, I think getting creases is one thing, but then just making sure you're folding straight can be really hard. And it really does come from years of practice. But, and some people just naturally have an ability to line things up better than other people. You know, my husband, he's Japanese. That has nothing to do with it, obviously. But he grew up as a kid with people making origami here all the time. That's a common thing that kids do. He's not very good at origami, I have to say. He makes great designs and stuff, but his folds aren't very precise. So it takes practice. You have to take a lot of time to really focus and get a good crease. So if, for example, we're just doing something as simple as folding a paper in half, what I like to do is kind of hold my paper here on the left side and then take the right side and first just focus on getting the points lined up. You can kind of see that pretty easily, you know, getting that lined up, getting this one lined up, and, you know, being able to kind of hold it in place so that you can get a good crease started from one end to the other, pinching those two parts off and then just finishing off the inside by creasing it off. Now if you have small hands or your kid, that kind of can be a little difficult. So another thing you can do is just simply fold it in half above the table. Hold it in your hands, get these two corners lined up first. Pinch here and do the same thing on the other side. And then, once you put things down, you should be able to follow those two creases that you've already made to smooth things out and get a good crease because you've already started both ends off. So either way works great. It's certainly a point of preference and size of hands and that kind of a thing. If you're folding in a place where you don't have a flat surface, then being able to do it off the table is always good. So either way works great. And you certainly find after folding one that doing the next becomes a little easier because the paper is getting more kind of cooperative as you do the next set of steps. And that can kind of give you an advantage to doing things. And then you can get a nice, good crease from both sides. Now the same thing goes if you're going to fold diagonally. If you're folding a diagonal crease, I'll show you guys with a different sheet of paper here. You want to start off first by just getting these 2 points lined up here. And from there, come straight down almost to a point where you're making a perpendicular angle there, perpendicular edge or whatever it's called. Come straight down, and from here, smooth out and out. And that should be able to give you a good crease. If you try to, you know, line up here and get things going like this, it sometimes can be a little tricky. So it helps to just go straight through from the middle to the middle. And I'm not really looking directly over my paper, so I might be off by a little bit, and that can give you a good crease. It certainly helps to be able to have your viewpoint be directly over your work as you're doing things. That always helps make sure everything is nice and lined up, and you can get things to come together like that. Now, another fold that you might do, for example, after doing some of these diagonal creases, is folding edges over into the center from a diagonal crease. You want to try for having your tip be as clean as you can. And so I like to hold my paper again with my left hand, fold with my right, and use my free finger here to kind of get this tip as close to that point and as neat as I can. Hold it and then just pull your paper down. And you can kind of get it secured there and then put one finger down on the other end and then just smooth out that edge. Again, a tricky challenge if you're a kid and you have smaller hands, but it's one way to definitely get things folded over. Now, no one says you have to do it the exact same way for the other side. I don't know about you, but I can't do that. My brain doesn't want to figure it out and gets angry at me. So I just turn it around. No one says you can't turn the paper around. And then we just have the same thing. I can still hold with my left hand and fold with my right, so I can get this bottom point down here nice and smooth the way I want it to be, and then pull up here so that I can get a nice smooth edge that is even up into the center. So that's one way where you can kind of use your hands to hold things as you work to make sure you get things as close to the center as you need to be. A tip always for any kind of project that you're working on where you're folding a lot of things into the center, cranes and things like that, it doesn't need to be exactly on the center line. You do that and things tend not to kind of cooperate later on down the road. So give yourself just a shadow of space between things as you work. So those are just some tips, I guess, on how I would go through doing things to make stuff lined up. The process for that thing that that step I just showed you guys is very similar if you're doing a door base where you bring both of these sides into the middle. We're just going to be starting with the same idea here. I want to kind of get things lined up at the top and at the bottom, and then from there create a crease. Or you can use the same technique I showed before where you can do this kind of in the air. You can just first focus on getting the top part, pinch it off, and again this is something you can do just by holding your paper in your hands too. You can get this part folded over, lined up with your center, pinch it off, and then with both of those pinched down you can create the crease that you need to. Use the edges of your paper as a guide so that you know when you're doing this you're getting everything lined up so that things come to a good crease when you put them together. And those kinds of things help when you're doing just small little triangular folds too. You want to be able to come to the crease that you've made. And this is again where making good creases is such a huge help, because if you've got a really loose crease here, and if I just kind of do something like this, that's a lot harder to see than say a good crease. You want to be able to have something clear that you can follow so that you can make the next crease right on where it needs to be. So, just some basic tips of what I like to do when I'm folding things to kind of make sure that everything is lined up and going the way you want it to. So, I hope some of these tips kind of help you guys. I know they're not specific to any particular kind of folding technique. Like I said, I'll have a link again to the playlist of all of those things that tell you guys how to make a valley crease, a mountain crease, how to, do all the square bases and water bomb bases and things like that. That I'll have a link again just as a reminder, you guys, if you're looking for beginner's tips for origami. And really, if you're practicing, you guys, you don't have to use fancy, expensive paper, In the old days in Japan, everybody used newspaper. Having this kind of colored origami paper was a treasure. It was really rare. So gum wrappers, pieces out of magazines, those kinds of things. Newspaper inserts for advertisements for grocery stores and things like that. People use those all the time here and make little boxes to use as temporary trash cans when they're in a place. You see them a lot of times in bathrooms and stuff, at spas and stuff. They're just sitting there for, when you're in the bathroom to put tissue in. Then you just throw the whole thing away. Super cool, very, eco-friendly kind of thing, much better than plastic bags. So, don't hesitate. Maybe I'll share with you guys a video of how to prep other kinds of paper to use for yourself. If you're just practicing, there's no need for it to be fancy. So feel free to use anything you've got and just have fun folding. And practice really helps a lot, and patience to make good creases. And I wish you guys all the best of luck in any of your projects that you might be doing. And I'll have some more fun kinds of tips and other fun projects to share with you guys in the days to come. Thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!